Hello, Zach. Hello, Will.
Hello, Jeff.
Hello.
Ah,
So here we are. We are on this fine Wednesday night. I don't know if you guys have been hit by a snowstorm, but we had a tiny one here.
yeah, like
We,
4 or 5 inches. What? Something like that, Will?
yeah, all I know is enough to keep all of my kids at home. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Mm.
one of
Yeah.
those.
So it's not like they left the house and you could lock the doors and they couldn't make it back in. They were already in the house.
Correct. Yes, and since I work from home, it was delightful. A delightful day today has been.
And I have I actually like my kids and my kids' friends by and large. But yeah, that's a jab. Thank you, Will. But we have the delight of being the neighborhood gathering
Oh, that's
spot on these
awesome.
days as well. So like we've had several kids in our house all day today, which is a thing, Just close the door and keep the screaming to a minimum. So
Yeah, we had that when we lived in Decatur. My oldest kids had we did homeschooling at that time and had a large group of people, and it was just really kind of nice having that.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but then we moved and we never quite had that again. Yeah,
Mhm.
we'd have game nights. There'd be like 12 people or 14 people. It was just crazy. So,
Wow. Yeah,
but
that's cool. That's cool.
anyway,
What is
we
it?
are.
What is it like having neighbors who like you? I I've always
Yeah.
wondered.
Or that you like, and like
Oh,
either
I love
way.
them all. They just don't reciprocate that love.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you have a barking dog?
No, no, I
Him,
just go outside and
Will
yeah,
is that. Yeah, yeah.
I go into my backyard and scream at 3 o'clock in the morning how much I love them, and then they just yell at me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe that's their
We're
way of showing love.
Maybe.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Just go inside if you just, let yourself into their house a few times and see if they get upset. But maybe it's just, maybe you're just reading the room wrong is what we're trying to
Well,
say,
yeah,
Will.
I think
Yeah.
we need to do something that will make them mad, and then see if the reaction is different.
Right, right. Well, and
Yeah.
I think Zach just touched on it there, about the breaking into their house and such, and then maybe I'm misreading the room. The problem is that I don't when I do break into their houses, and I do often, I don't go into the rooms that they are in. So that's probably the problem.
That's it right there. Yeah.
They need to see me and they need to know that the person moving their salt shakers around the room is me.
Face to the name. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Face to the specter. Face to the
This
phantom.
is
Yeah, yeah.
this is where I have gone wrong many times in my life, and this is just a prime example of that. Classic Will flaw.
Yeah.
So, anywho, we are here to talk about, among other things, besides moving salt shakers and the amount of snow that we've received, uh, the Denizens of the Blood Sands. I had to look at the title. I started to panic for a
Well, it's
minute.
had so many, right?
I
Like
know.
that's why you put it in your background though, of your video feed so that you're like, it's right there.
Yeah, I
I
can
can
read it. It's like
yeah.
my kids' names, right?
Yeah.
So they were all wear
So,
name tags.
yeah.
Yeah, when speaking of the name Denizens of the Blood Sands, I think that this is the better option than, Unhappy Neighbors of the Blood Sands, which you'll remember I wrote that in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a theme with me today, and it's
Yeah.
you're gonna see that theme as this whole
Why don't
conversation
my
goes
neighbors
on.
like me of the Blood Sands?
Yeah. Yeah.
What up, dog? Blood Sands.
Yes.
Well, what's funny is because it's funny, but because it was one word for a long time, and then I think when I went to actually make the title up, it's like it didn't make any sense to be one word. It just looked terrible, so that's why I split it up.
Yeah. As long as you're not like all one word, but you also capitalize the S, the first S, and so it's like that's the worst of all worlds, and our worst tendency as fantasy writers is to say, let's smash it, but then it doesn't look good smash. Let's try to fix that by just capitalizing random letters within it and calling it good.
Yeah, it was it's quite a thing, and I went through quite a few iterations with trying to with Zach. So Zach has seen, we work since I've worked long enough with Zach, he starts to see the idiosyncrasies and the like 100 variations of a cover.
I'd just like
Yeah.
to imagine that this cover originally was just Zach's face smiling with a big thumbs up, right?
Well, the
Oh,
Just
the image was always the same, but it was the I don't know what you call that. It's really not the logo, the trademark. I'm not sure, but well, actually, this part here, the one you're seeing is Zach did. I think it's because I sent you a file that wasn't high enough res, and then you didn't have the font for it, or do you do the?
No, this is all you. I just I was able to.
No, what happens is substitute a font.
Oh, you did?
No, no, I
I
think.
didn't.
What do you mean?
Okay, now
Are you
let's not have
serious?
this conversation on this. But I used your file here, so
How'd that happen?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll
You
I
figure
should
it
want.
out
send
later.
you should
I,
send him a video of you doing it right, Zach, but then actually just shows you doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
That's so funny. So I assume that maybe you did that for readability on a
No,
smaller.
no. That was going to irritate me the entire time when I look past your head and see two different t
Well, yeah,
fonts.
because that's what I sent you was a version of wherever that is as
Yeah,
of
that one.
that. But I do think this is more readable, at
No,
least
yours
as
is
far.
much better. Yours on the cover is much. I'm still going to let you own both of them, but the
Okay.
actual one is better. Yeah.
Well, I have to believe you because I do.
You don't have to, but I appreciate that you do, and I could be wrong offline. So
Yeah, it just may be one of those. I'll go so far, but I may just have to give it up as an unsolved mystery.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
now I want to spend the next 10 minutes
We're gonna
going
hit
back and
pause, and we're
troubleshoot.
gonna come back with an answer. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, this is a thing that I mean I kind of had this idea for a while back, and the idea was to just do a science fantasy, I guess, setting. And I guess I've never really asked you, Zach, but did you ever think this was a crazy idea?
Yes.
No pause, no thinking. Immediately, I was waiting for that question. Yes.
Yes. Well, I think I thought that it was a crazy idea for this system,
Yes.
right? Like that's like I love science fantasy. So I'm excited about this idea, but is it a crazy idea to do a science fantasy bestiary for a non-existent setting in old school essentials, which is almost exclusively traditional fantasy? Yes,
Yes.
100%. Um,
I could, we never said anything, but I could just, there was always like an absence of affirmation or,
yeah, there's a void of like, yeah, confidence that permeated everything. Yeah, yeah.
well, I gotta admit that I was feeling pretty low when I first put out the thing to gain some followers and I had like 40 people. And I was thinking, oh no, what have I
Well,
done?
but the cool thing is that it seems like from the early promotions, we're recording this before the project has gone live by a bit. Like it has found some traction. At least we see like the follower count is growing at a rate that we're very happy with. So you were right, I was wrong. Like there is an audience here, I think, for Blood Sands, which is awesome because you have a lot of more things that you want to do with it.
Yeah, and I think, and I do have history of creating a setting for a system that doesn't support it.
True, fair.
If I
So,
had a nickel for every time I tried to jam whatever crazy idea I have into a setting or into a game system at least that does not support it, I'd have like 5 nickels. That's not a lot of nickels, but like I still feel like it's weird. I keep doing it because I'm not done earning those nickels.
Yeah,
no.
no.
So the thing is I know I get an idea. I'm not sure how you two work, but I have a pretty strong idea, but I don't have a complete idea.
Yes.
It, and so there's two aspects, and also that's why Will's here too. Is a what? Yeah, one reason is I thought I need a bestiary, but I'm not the best at cranking things out, and so I got a whole bunch of different Pinterest science fiction novel covers and various images and hand them over to Zach. And hey, Zach, can you make a bestiary based off these pictures?
These pictures that we're not going to use,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
which
These are images that were just, the idea was to use images that were off of these science fiction covers as inspiration for the art, but we're actually hiring a legit an Artemis Prime to to create new images, just being loosely inspired by those
so,
images.
So I'm now just imagining Artemis Prime, the Grecian Transformer.
Mm,
I think they're I'm mixing up two properties. One is Artemis Fowl and Optimus Prime. So,
yes,
and
fair.
I'm not familiar with either one of them, so I'm really in dangerous territory.
Struggling, yeah.
What?
One's a robot and the other one I don't know. I mean, th
Yeah.
What?
that's
I think one's an evil boy mastermind.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah. That's the '80s cartoon robot one, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah, yeah.
no, no, nope, not it.
Yeah, nope. Dang it. Okay. Well, and I looked through that art because I saw the art that you had provided Zach for this book, and which is it's really it has a really neat idea. You know, the Pinterest board idea of create a
Yeah.
monster from this. I'm a little sad that that picture you accidentally put in there of you in a swimsuit didn't make it in
Well,
as a
actually,
monster.
that was the inspiration for what's behind me.
You
Yeah.
love it, love it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm sure that our artist or artists that you're gonna do here are gonna end up knocking it out of the park. But I have fallen in love with some of the placeholder images at this point, and I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
oh no, like that thing that I love is not gonna actually be in this book. So fingers crossed. I'm sure it's gonna be even better or just as great when the actual piece comes in. But like the Burbling like vampire thing.
Oh,
I
that's
just
a good
Yes,
love
one.
that piece
Yeah.
as an example.
the
And
golden GI for me.
Golden GI is another one that's like, yep, that one's great. I know you and I both like when we found that piece of art for the Talogtite, uh, and then we kind of figured out what it was. We were both like,
Yes,
yes, this is exactly the vibe that we want. Then it's like, oh, but I have to wave goodbye to that art piece, which again, we're getting cool ones in replacement, so it's a win. But until you
right.
see the new cool one,
Well,
you're
because right,
nervous.
because you saw those because I didn't say one for one. I think I just gave you a bunch of pictures, and then you picked the ones that spoke to you.
Yeah, and I actually went out and found some more because I think there were times when we said like one of the big design plans from the get-go, at least for me, was like, hey, if we're going to do a bestiary, the best types of bestiaries have a variety of creatures across a variety of categories and aren't just like super focused on one thing. So I think I went out and found some more like plant-based art
Oh, right, right.
creatures or things like that to kind of help fill up that corner of it. So yeah, it was fun. I like this approach though to a bestiary. It's very like liberating to be like, there's not any existing stuff, just go be inspired by art and then figure out what that art means.
I'm re-looking at that art and I'm the Lindworm in particular got me. I really enjoyed that piece. And then the Gobbo or Gobbo?
Gabo, yeah.
Gobbo. Yeah, yeah. And that's what we have depicted on the cover, right? That
Yes,
Matthew did. Yeah. Yeah.
yes. In fact, I think there are hopefully there'll be gobos on the back page too.
Nice.
I,
Yeah, this
I,
is like,
it,
like a greater Gabo here, which is
Yes,
great. Yeah.
versus the not so great Gobbo
yeah.
that
Yeah.
just
Mediocre
chills out
Gabo. Yeah. Yeah.
mediocre Gobbo, mid Gobbo.
Well,
But
and that's the thing. It was Matthew was kind of wanted to know like how close he had to stay. I'm like what, just run with it. So I didn't want him to be confined. So I kind of almost even want to having after seeing him wrong hand after seeing what he's drawn, it kind of makes me want to like write a little like a couple paragraphs of what's just happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Zara
Yeah.
and Zardak are in the such and then blah blah blah, and they've came across and come up with a little like scenario that they find themselves in. But
Yeah. 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 I
I,
like this piece a lot because it's not just the Gabo, but it's all these other pieces. I know, like in one iteration of this art, a sketch of this, like there was a missile in one of the hands, right?
yes,
And that's I always like those like little pieces of flavor, even though the missile didn't make the cut, like that gun did. And that gun is definitely useful for me going forward when I'm thinking about gear or whatever.
yeah, yeah. I found myself looking at because before the Matthew had provided the finished piece here, I had seen some of the sketch, like the an early sketch of it, I think, and that I reference that a lot when trying to think of things to add to the gazetteer, and just get that feel, get that vibe, and I think Matthew's done a fantastic job with it.
yeah, and that's what I mean. So I had this kind of sketch work. Then the next step was Zach with the bestiary. And then once we have the bestiary, then we get the art, and then also then with Will brought on board to help with later, which should be the setting material.
Yep.
And so the idea is try and get as much things to inspire people to the final product because it's really kind of hard. It's really hard. In fact, one person is tasked with writing adventure, but when you don't have things to specifics to draw upon, sometimes that can be kind of difficult. So it's
Oh,
kind of like
yeah.
chicken or the egg kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
And I can say that the art that is in the bestiary absolutely helped me. And then also reading through Zach's writing in the bestiary was a big help, not only to kind of jumpstart some ideas that people will see when the setting comes out, but also just a lot of fun ideas in this book. I'm excited.
Yeah, and I guess, and that's the thing. It's like really trying to create something, that's both different but also not too different. It's got to be familiar as well. So I think there's been a lot of good work that's been done. And I think Zach's done an excellent job with being able to. I mean, we got a lot of different stuff going on. So I'm
Well,
pretty excited.
there's it's a tricky line, right, between, and I don't know that I always get it right, but like there's a tricky line between getting weird and getting original and having those touch points of familiarity so that when a GM opens up the book for the first time and like peruses that they have an anchor of familiarity to what they're seeing, right? Like we want the gobos are very much our goblins, and part of that is there's, I mean, even a reference in the name, but then when you read the stats and you read the intro, you're gonna get a goblin vibe right out the bat. They're hopefully, I think they're decidedly different in several areas, but the goal is you can touch point these to goblins and be not too far off. And I think we did a kind of as a design prompt at the beginning, we had an art piece that inspired us, but also a stat block from OSE or a creature from OSE that inspired the baseline of the creature. So there's nothing that's like, there maybe is a few that are like completely whole cloth or that's going to be the vibe, but at their root, all of them started with what is our version of a vampire? What is our version of a goblin? And let's go from there.
Right. Well, it's like the idea of you reinventing the wheel. If you show someone an oval, they at least have an idea of what they're, kind of start to get an idea of what they're looking at. You show them a triangle, and they're going to kind of give you a look of what is happening here. And you give them an ice cream sundae, and they're really not going to know what you're doing.
But they're going
Yes.
to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. True. True.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is like there are some things that are just animalistic and you need to fight, but so many of these things are also creatures and peoples that you can interact with.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that I think that's one of my favorite parts about going looking through this is again seeing that concept art, and then looking at what Zach had come up with for the statistics and for the personalities, and I I look at the creature and I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be a big monster to fight. Then I read sets, I'm like, he went a very different direction, and I loved it. I thought it was very cool because it gives you a more dynamic world to work with. Absolutely.
Like we've got Oasis ogres and what we call, which are just big, huge, giant ogres in our world, and we've also got grinners, which are our version of like a beholder. And both of those, I think, are terrifying monsters in the game, but both of those also have write-ups for key individuals and things like that. And a lot of those individuals are people that you can negotiate with. You know, the Grinners are often running basically crime organizations or something like that on underbelly sort of stuff. And a lot of the Oasis ogres are patrolling various oases and like the lords of those little domains, and you might find yourself in need of whatever they have in their pocket of of uh, uh, resources. So I think that was, yeah, definitely a goal of the Bloodsands are a nasty place. You know, at its core, it's a irradiated, decimated, mutated wasteland. So if the terrain is already going to be against you, if the terrain is already violent and deadly, then the creatures should still have a piece of that. But you also almost need them to be willing to negotiate and willing to barter because everybody's just trying to do anything they could possibly do to stay alive and move the needle forward.
Right. I think in a setting like the Blood Sands, danger is already kind of an assumed, right? You don't get to survive this long in a environment like this by being something that can't hold its own, or at least, terrify others enough to back off and at least be willing to have that conversation, right?
Hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
It in some ways it made me think kind of comparison is to the Hutts in I can't remember which Star Wars we had, but you have all these different Hutts. They're different personalities, but they're all
Yeah.
still similar greedy little or greedy, conniving political animals, but they're not all the same.
Oh, that was Attack of the or oh Clone Wars, right? They had a whole
Yeah.
like couple of episodes, like a little story arc where it's just a bunch of huts all together doing stuff.
Well, and to be, to look at it straight up, like definitely the huts are a reference point for me for Oasis Ogres and things like
Oh
that
yeah.
because there's a lot of Star Wars legacy novels that I fell in love with where you have all the huts on Nar Shaddaa and Nal Hutta that are this, right? There are these overlords of very small, isolated domains by and large that are kind of ridiculous, but if you find yourself in that domain, you have no choice but to answer to them. They do have power there. They do have control. So yeah, for sure, that's a great reference.
Yes. So maybe even one of these also speaks like Truman Capote. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
gonna
the idea was we at least as far as the bestiary goes, it is self-contained. So there's no we're talking about setting, but all the stuff is easily to you can make it to your own and drop it into whatever game you're running. There's no need to wait until the bestiary comes out, or not bestiary, but the setting, or even have a setting outside of your own. If you just want to throw some of these elements in, that's the whole idea. Because we didn't really change up. We didn't monkey with the stats. We didn't monkey with the stat blocks. We didn't really do anything that. Well, I shouldn't say about monkeying with the stat stocks, but we haven't really. All the stuff's still there as far as the standard, AC versus hit die. There's no mechanical changes made.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing in the stats that isn't perfectly compatible with OSE. Like at one point, I can't even remember. We may have even nixed this, but like at one point yeah, we did change it back. We had instead of it being treasure tables, we had salvage tables. So it was just ST instead of TT. Um, just because salvage was in my mind like you're dealing the currency is salvage, not coin or whatever. But the truth was we were still monetarily basing it off of the exact same values as treasure tables in OSE proper. So I think we ended up just saying like let's take out some of the points of confusion. Let's just still call it TT.
Yeah, remove those barriers to entry, right? It may be a small thing, but sometimes you change that one little small thing about how a stop block usually presents itself, and suddenly you've got, people falling all over themselves to, you know,
Yeah.
to slightly melt down. It's
Yeah, we
just
kept the in the currency we made it like salvage pieces, so it's SP, so it does correlate to silver pieces. So you can abbreviate it. It's still different, but it's not such that you're talking like a something completely different because we end up I got the Lankmar setting for DCC and their monetary system's just different. So now it's like, okay, like now I got to do this
Yeah.
weird conversion in my head. It's like,
Yeah.
and
And
that
what are you
doesn't
winning
happen.
there? You can get the same vibes as soon as you go to our treasure tables. You can get the same vibes. So just let's just if you're it's like if in hindsight it's like saying, well, we're making a 5e book, but instead of saying everything's AC, we call it AD, but then it all works the same. It's like, yeah, but for that half second that's very valuable in a GM's session, when they're trying to quickly reference the stat block and give a fast answer, you have created a stumbling block for them by just tweaking that one letter. Even though it works exactly the same, their brain is going to put up a roadblock, a stop sign, something. So yeah, it ended up being cleaner to just do it that way.
So I'm curious on how much like let's say like a like how many gobbo pieces is a bejeweled like goblet gonna be, right?
Yeah, I think the reality is that that's the fast answer for me was like, there's no such thing as currency in this world.
Right.
Um, there is definitely jewels and all that, and those could have the same value that they have in OSC. But really, what people are using for currency is, you know, wiring, circuitry, and other forms of scrap and salvage. So,
Yeah, the raw
um,
materials that can't be made and that cannot be reproduced or reproduced as easily as it once was. Yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Exactly right.
this is a moon that was brought about, was forcibly habitated by outside entities. So the people that are here are not willingly brought here. They're whole societies and cities and cultures that have been forced onto this moon and have been living here since. But in my mind, is like with a moon, you're going to have limited resources, and where do you get the precious metals? And I thought really what it could be is there's certain societies that, as they were brought over, had those metals, and that is become like that's the stuff that is not only just harvested, but that becomes just the standard, right? So everything is compared to whatever that metal is.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it's probably no different than right now. It's like, like copper has and gold and silver, there's a there's a base price for per ounce for, you know, those elements. And so
Yeah.
right now you could, as people do, right? They go into houses and pull out electrical wiring and they go sell it for scrap and they get money for it. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's a pretty established thing. So nobody pays anything, necessarily with copper, but in a right society, you could be paying stuff with copper or with silver or with bits of gold or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
and I imagine that the idea with that is to handing that over as a coin is probably not going to be the end result, but rather smelting it down and using it for being able to actually put it into the machines that you would need to make function.
Yeah,
Is
or
kind
it
of how
could just be
I see
that
it.
it's just that it just becomes abstract, right? It could just be a chunk of anything.
Right.
And even if it's that or if it's something comparable, it's still all related to that, whatever that material's value is. So
Yeah.
whether you're carrying a electro screwdriver or whether you got a chunk of iridium, they're both the same amount. It doesn't really matter. But in that economy, you could exchange, accordingly based on them having equal value.
Yeah.
Because like if you're in a city, you're probably like in the city state, you're probably dealing with currency. But as you're going further out, it really is going to be less so. Like, most currencies today, they don't actually, the coinage isn't of any material worth.
Yeah.
We have quarters and we have pennies, and we have dimes, but there's no precious metals in those, or they're just trace. There's no intrinsic value to them. But here,
Right.
everything you're trading has some sort of intrinsic value to it.
I
Exactly right.
always assumed the intrinsic value was in how great Abraham Lincoln looked on that penny,
You
but
know what?
all right, no, it's sure. I pay for my art, buddy, but
Yeah, so anyhow, now so the next, I mean, we have a good running with the bestiary. The next obviously was going to be well, I say the next, but is going to be the setting. So Will's been so I have things pretty much lined out to a certain point in my mind, but there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be filled in, and I thought I need somebody who doesn't think like me to fill in all those gaps that I have, and that's you, Will.
I am so sorry.
I was like, well, I think you need to maybe add one more qualifier. I don't think like Jeff, but maybe also after this you'll have like or Will.
Yes.
And yeah, like it's not just enough that they don't think like Jeff. We've got to qualify that also not these people because
Well, I figure that Jeff has come to me because like I imagine there's a spectrum of writers, right? There's the phenomenal and then there's the will, and Jeff is just trying to figure out how exactly far away from my side of things he needs to go when he gets the real writer to come in and fix whatever I've done to it.
Yeah.
So
So you're like the baseline setter, right? Like,
yeah, well, I like to imagine that I create the floor, you see.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Subflooring actually, because he's going to put flooring on top of that to
Yeah, but it's still important. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, the only problem is Will thinks too conservatively starting out. I say, no, Will, you need to take off these restraints, remove that governor.
Cast
It
aside.
it's kind of my writing process when especially when working with new people. It's I have no idea what you're gonna want or what you're not gonna want. So I'll start off like here's a softball. What do you think about this? Well, I think you could do X, Y, or Z. I'm like, this is the direction you'd like me to go. Versus, I feel like I got there's this fear built up in my head, right? That if I go too far this direction, then I won't be able to pivot as easily. So you just nice right down the middle, right? Right
Yeah.
down the middle with something that's clearly super boring and conservative. Let me know what you want me to do.
No, the crawling factory that's anthropomorphic and has its legs missing as it crawls along the desert. I thought that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, no, I really like that one. That idea. That was a whim idea. Um, but yeah, I'm
Uh,
looking.
whim. Yeah.
Zach,
So
have you actually?
now
Oh,
then like we need to make this like an actual like adventure where this giant crawling monstrosity that's scraping along the sands as its legs are gone, its humanoid form, that you need to enter it and be able to extract whatever goodness or things you need to get out of it, and nobody's been able to do that, and you also got to survive being able to actually get into the thing.
That's
That's
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
I think the defense, if I'm not mistaken, the defenses on that one are a tribe of gobos that live on top of it and like run along its back, keeping anybody from getting inside,
yeah.
which I think
Hmm.
is kind of a fun little idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of and I'll be honest, a lot of my best ideas came so far I've come from reading through the bestiary and just going like, okay, all right, here's how I see Zach casting these creatures. So what else would I do with them? Right? What else could I in here to not reinforce that. So that way the books feel like they belong together. And that was a huge thing that I've been trying to do is make sure that you can clearly see that they aren't it's not it's what I'm putting in there is not a copy of what Zach did with the bestiary, but it is absolutely complementary, right?
Hmm.
Is sort of
Hmm.
my goal here.
That's
So,
yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
no, he just said sort of. I was going to ask about the sort of, but that's go ahead. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, I think that like, especially because the bestiary is coming out first, definitely in my mind, the bestiary doesn't assume that you are using it for the setting. There's definitely an implied setting within it, and there's references to that implied setting. But there's but all of them are also assuming that you love the Gabo or love the whatever, the Condor, and you want to put it in, you just want to have it be a weird monster in your own setting or in the standard OSE setting. And so there is this like little bit of a dance that the bestiary does of giving nods to an implied setting, but also not leaning so heavily into that you can't use it easily in your other. So I imagine that, yeah, now your job, Will, is to say, all right, yes, the bestiary implies a setting, but we've got to figure out a way to like reinforce that implication now that the setting is here.
Yeah,
Um, and my vagueness maybe needs to be locked down with concrete in some areas
Well,
or
what it comes down to is the setting has locations and has people, but I also asked Will to come up with adventure hooks and ideas, and so that's where the best here I think really is coming to play, right? Is those thoughts for adventures?
one one thing I did, one thing I secretly did, was I copied all the text out of the bestiary and created my own little document, and then um, eliminated anything that wasn't specifically location based or like mentioning something within the world itself, and then have been using that as sort of sort of a kind of a checkpoint for myself of like, hey, these are mentioned specifically alongside this. So I would like to say at least a mention when I get to, when I get to city B, I should mention monster D because monster D actually does have that word in there, reinforce that tie. But just a weird little thing I did. I don't know if I don't know why I brought that up. Oh
Well, I
no.
think you should definitely put a lot more thought into it than I probably would have. So I'm
If
glad
I would have
you're taking a
known,
systematic approach to this.
if I would have known when I wrote it that I was going to be handing it off to you, Will, I would have added another, I would have done some more work to make it even more complex and confusing.
There you
It
go.
was the
Uh,
strangest thing to read something with your name on it, Zach, that didn't have periodically "screw you, Will" just tossed
yeah, just
randomly into a
embedded.
paragraph. It was like weird. It's like, did Zach actually write this?
Yeah.
There's no hidden insults to me.
It's like it's like the in the opposite way. It's like you, Modiphius writes the Star Trek or the Star Trek RPG, but they also do the Dune RPG. And in one of the Dune RPG supplement books, I think it's the one Power and Pawns, but I have to go look. Yeah, they're talking about like I think they're talking about like the Space Guild or whatever, right? And they're like detailing, like it's paragraphs of like how the guild operates and how it's structured and whatever. And at one point, one of the writers wrote in the paragraph, they're like doing all this technical writing, and at the end of it, they're just like, I freaking love Dune. And the editor did not catch it at
Oh,
all. And so it's this like you can just imagine this like this guy, whether that's Eric, Andrew Peregrine or somebody else, that's like writing do this like really dense like politic section and be like, this is the best, period. Like just assuming that somebody would catch that comment and it would go away before the end. And then I actually really appreciate it, even though it is obviously a miss. I'm like, yeah, but what that shows is they love that setting and that there's passion behind it. And I missed an opportunity to say, screw you, Will, and express that for everyone else for all of eternity, which, is sad. But maybe Jeff could do me a solid and work it back in
or,
somewhere.
See,
or you could have worked out some sort of like reference to reference to reference to reference to reference, and it circles back around to that actually doesn't give you an answer. You're like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. Just make Will go on this like goose chase of the
yeah,
snipe hunt of. Wait a minute, he says over here that it is, but then I go over here that it goes over here. And then yeah, then at the end there's just a middle finger.
yeah.
yeah.
Actually, the true secret is that when in the section of the book that I'm sure you're going to add in there, which is the monsters mating calls, if you add them all
That's
together,
the end pages. Yeah.
it's just a long stream of insults at me for like pages. It's great.
Yes,
Yeah,
Well,
yes.
you gotta.
there'll be another supplement will be Blood Sands After Dark, and it'll be a
Yes, yes,
it'll have a paper cover over the top of it.
yes. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, what an idea.
But no, this
Um,
is it's actually you mentioned the like what I'm like kind of how I'm going about this because I actually reached out to everybody you mentioned to me, Jeff, that is a part of this project. I reached out to every single one individually to try to get an idea of like, okay, well, what are you doing? What are your plans with this? What are you doing? What are your plans with this? Had a conversation with Matthew Sargent for a bit about his approach to this, and basically just it's wonderful to write the setting after.
So what did you get from Matthew? Because he's a very quiet fellow.
Oh, well, first we mainly just talked about just hey, GaryCon, what convention are you going to? But we were talking a bit about the like what the monster was holding, things like that. And I learned that the trick to getting him talking is you tell him what you like about it, and then he'll tell you why he did it. Right. So no,
So
that's
no,
that's all of us. If you yeah. I respect that
yeah, yeah.
as an artist. Yeah.
I know how to talk to nerds. All right.
yeah.
You just say, hey, I like this thing you did. Oh, let me tell you more about that. It's like, gotcha.
Well, it's
Gotcha,
funny.
sucker.
Is that at a convention he's with his wife, and they're quite quite different. Like she's like, "Oh, would you like a cookie?" And she's just like, and Matthew's very quiet, very unassuming. He'll say a few things, but he's not very, and she's very much more like outgoing. And
Mm.
so I thought it's kind of interesting that dynamic.
It is. So my we got on their Christmas card list, and I'm was very excited because I Matthew and Raquel that are first of all, freaking awesome people. But my wife and I, when we met them at D8 Summit Charity last year, we managed to we learned that if you stay there near their booth long enough, you actually realize they're basically the same person. They just tag team who's going to be the one talking and outgoing. And it's like, as you
Nice.
can see her shut down, he starts to like bump
Oh,
up. And then it's like
Right.
it's this amazing tag team teeter-totter of you're going to get a lot of energy from these two. The trick is, what time did you show up? And that's going to be the one you get, right?
Nice.
And
Yeah, that's handy.
it's wonderful, super positive, amazing people. That's right. When you mentioned that he was on this, I think Jeff, you'll remember I got
yeah.
super excited about it
Yes.
because yeah,
Well, and I think the thing is, seeing his art style, I really enjoyed. And I didn't really ask him to diverge from it. One person, I can't remember who I was talking about artists. If you're looking for artists, um, they mentioned that artists, like you see what they're doing, um, and they can do other things other than what you're seeing. They said one of the things when you look at an artist is look for consistency. And I noticed that Matthew's art is very consistent, like very consistent.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
so I had very little doubt. And there's a few images that he did because the thing is with the art, because I should have had Matthew on, but as well. But I decided that I wanted a certain feel, and I just needed to have an artist that would be consistent in that vibe, or artists. But the risk is, I mean, with Matthew, I mean, he was able to provide the vibe I'm needing, but all my eggs are in his basket. So,
Yeah.
wow, limitless power, Matthew. All right, Matthew, if you're listening to this, limitless
leverage.
power, buddy.
You got leverage. Because honestly, I don't know. I would have to look very hard to find anybody that could produce, I think, something comparable to the style that he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a unique style. I love it though. It is and I had gotten his product. He had what did he do last year?
It's
College of the
the
Third Wave.
ska.
Yeah, College of the Third Wave, and looking through that, it's a very fun, upbeat, art. Everybody's skanking and being a rude boy and all that jazz, and it's a ton of fun. But then to see that same style behind you right now, but seeing it as this sort of like you know this type of setting it's really cool because it's like, oh, I recognize this, but I also don't recognize this.
Well, what I think what burned in my head early on, this is going back a couple of years, was he's got that image of an older fellow in a spacesuit with a bubble helmet. Have you seen
Yes.
that?
Yes.
And for some reason, that's what sold me was that image.
Mm.
And I'm not sure. He has it at his booth, I believe, is one of his band, or maybe I don't know, but it's like, yeah, that's what I want, and I think that's what we're going for. But I think we're off to a good start, and I'm pretty excited. I think we hopefully will have we'll have the best area out here shortly. The main thing is waiting for the art. So all the writing, Zach's done with all the writing. I'm done with all the layout, and we've had it editing passes. We're just now so Matthew does work for he's a professional artist, so and he's got a client that's pretty demanding. So not me, but me as far as he gets commissions sometimes from bigger companies, and then he has to produce.
Yep.
And so now we have a window opening, so we should be getting a flood of art. So I'm pretty excited. So then hopefully later this year we will come out with a setting, and then I need to come up, I guess, with some sort of rules for characters and for equipment. So
I think that's the thing that excites me. Like, I think from the beginning, I know we said at the beginning, like Zach, I was like looking at you like, are you sure this is the setting for this? But what I do believe is once like there's a chunk of people that I think there's a chunk of people who are going to say recognize that they can use this book with their current games, and they're going to have a lot of crazy fun ideas in here. And the fact that we're science fantasy and not science fiction, and there's a lot of non-tech stuff in here, just as much as there is, pseudo tech. I think you're going to see a lot of utility. But I'm very excited you get the bestiary, you get the setting book, then you get the player options, and all of a sudden now, OSE has been traditionally just fantasy, and
Yep.
anything else has been kind of fringe or very limited in scope, at least that I'm aware of. So I'm excited about the idea of hopefully offering a set of products that allow that system to have this very distinctly different genre that you can go play in and use the same rules that you're used to playing over here, but now you got this whole new sandbox. And I think that will be very, very cool because most other systems do that, right? Like most other systems really hone in and develop, this other genre, this other setting, this other whatever. And I know we have Dolmen one coming out, and that's a whole other thing, but like it's still in the same general genre. So I think this sort of product has the potential of doing, what Weird Frontiers or MCC did for DCC, where we say, here's a whole different play style, a whole different vibe, and hopefully that helps bring a whole new type of audience the OSE mechanic.
Well, plus, I think it's on that same note, I would love to see like a it would be interesting to see if the release of these products then leads to someone else releasing products of and also weird off the wall direction for OSE, right? Like get that ball
Oh,
rolling.
I see what you're saying. Yes, and I what
Yeah.
I would also like to see because I'm also planning on ultimately too. I plan on transitioning to Dungeon Crawl Classics with all this. And like they did, I think with the Purple Planet, well, I should say like they did with that, but what I would like to do is when I get to that point is offer like other people to be able to write adventures for the settings. So,
Yeah.
because the setting goes beyond just the Blood Sands, but we're just all focused at right now, and maybe that's all we ever will be is on the Blood Sands. But the idea is that there's plenty of opportunity, and also then like you're saying, I would love if people, you're right. So may do other products for OSC, but I would also just love to even see people be able to take this and do some fun stuff with it and make some money for themselves off of it.
Yeah, I have to imagine. I think one of my favorite things as a game master is, when I've created a couple of my own, homebrew worlds and my players will play in it. And then every so often, one of my players will say, "Hey, I've got an adventure idea. Can I run something?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, it'll be your turn to run." They're like, "Yeah, but can I run it in your world?" And it's like, Yes, yes, you can. Please take it and run. That's why it's there. Take it and run, man." Right? I have to imagine that designing a setting, there's got to be some of that in there too, right? Like the excitement, like what an honor it would be to see somebody come in and say, "Hey, I love what you've done. May I please add something?" It's like, yes. At least
But I
that's how
think
I
that's
am.
been the success of, well, actually been the success. I think that's definitely been with the DMs Guild with drive through with Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro or
Yeah.
whatever they're called. But the idea is that if people want, I think that's what's kind of what has kind of like kind of has kept them. I don't think has kept them going, but there's a lot of health to be said by giving fans an outlet to be able to produce material, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Well,
And
heck,
so,
a number of people who are becoming names like true names in the TTRPG space got their start there. Got to cut their teeth on it and then keep going, built themselves an audience. And I think it's wonderful and it's a wonderful opportunity, right?
Yeah, sure.
End of thought out of nowhere. Sorry, that was a weird crash ending to that sentence.
Yeah, you can look forward to things just like that in the upcoming Gazetteer.
exactly.
Just yeah.
Oh man. So for those of you who don't know, by the way, listening to this, Zach and I, we played together in person, in a game on Sunday evenings, and
I
this
like
is
I like to imagine though that up until this point when you ruined everything, they're just like, man, these guys like are just sniping at each other out of the blue. Yeah,
well, I don't think we're sniping at each other. I think I'm going with what you're saying and being real nice about it. Yeah. So,
sure, okay,
oh
yeah,
no,
we'll
my
buy
goal
that.
is to
Yeah.
let you snipe at me and then make you look like the jerk, and it's
Oh yeah, well it
awesome.
was working. Yeah, 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 that's great.
Well, what's funny is Zach had said that he reached out to me and says, you know what? I think if you're looking for people to write for Gary's Appendix, I think Will would be a good person to consider.
Who got
And
a hold of
so,
his email and sent you that?
well, it was a different Will, but I got confused and I came up with you.
I said Will Doyle, and
Yeah, it's like
he did
I
Will,
was
and
like, I
your
don't
name
know
popped up, and
why he
he's
would
like,
have said,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but so anyway, I looked at your I looked up your did the googly and I noticed that you had a lot of the YouTube videos and shorts on Facebook or different things, but it's like, oh, uh, you're a character, and it's like I need that would work really well.
I'm I'm a something, that's for sure. That's
Yes.
characters. That's the nicest way I've ever heard somebody put that. That's
And
amazing.
then I didn't think anything of it, so he said, "Hey, we're going to do some articles." And it's like, "Sure." And then at Gamehole Con, I kind of forgot who I signed up for and done what, and it's like I wind up on Zach's table, and and then all of a sudden, then you sit down next to me. Like that's pretty ironic. And then you were the same in person as you were on video, so I thought that's kind of interesting.
I gotta tell you, I was actually terrified the moment I realized you were right there. Because I was like, oh no, he's gonna be stuck with like 2, 3 straight hours of me. And there's a good chance I never get another writing job with Jeff again. Like, oh no. Like I don't mind if Zach Zach's already made his choice to
Yeah,
be stuck with me,
yeah.
but I gotta not lose this guy. And then immediately, of course, just was myself the entire time. So
Yes.
whoops.
Well, I think that's probably a good note for like the value, because just thinking about, hey, there's an audience here. There's a huge value in going to conventions and about putting yourself out there and being available to the community, not just online, but also in those places. Because online, you're one face out of 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever that are interested in doing things. But yeah, legitimately, most of the time that you get, I found opportunities or connect with someone to the level that the opportunity that I had is continued. Almost always that's because I went and I met them face to face, or we rubbed shoulders, or we rolled dice together, or we had dinner, like something that reinforced the connection in a way that the other 10,000 people didn't. And that's part of the reason that, I mean, I just got back from a con. We were talking about that in the pre-show. We were at least yeah, Jeff and I are going to go to a show next month. There's just part of that is it's that binding of people that really helps.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's oh sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was say yeah. I made I've been making videos for a bit before I went to D8 Summit Charities last year, and before that point, I knew a number of people. We talked online, and in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, like I've got connections. But when I started going to conventions last year, when I really started going, yeah, it's a world of difference. I know people now, but not like I know people, but more like I got to see them face to face. I got to know who they are. I can like really kind of solidify who they are, and they can solidify who I am. And I've made wonderful connections, but also friendships in the past years. Also Zach, but friendships, which is great. And it's going to conventions is the best. Just gonna throw that out there. If you're listening to us and you're like, how do I get in there and start doing things? Go to conventions, please.
But I think another aspect is that, like, how do you find an artist? You can go through, there are different venues that you can go through to sort through, but it's very tedious and very long, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. But yet, when you go to convention, the choice is much smaller, and it weeds out a lot of people that are just, you know, then you're able to meet them, and so then you get to know that person. And I think that's, as far as if you're a freelancer, that's huge because it helps the person looking for somebody, your skill set to actually engage with you and see. And once they know you, then you have it much more easy in than just having a website or on ArtStation or on whatever, you know however that works out.
Yeah, yeah. It also, like, one of my favorite notes, and I'm sure that I talked to him online before this, but like one of my favorite moments from a show where I got to meet somebody was I had bought a book off of Kickstarter that a guy named Frank Tedeschi had made. It's this like 5e adventure that has like it's all fungus themed and it's like risograph printing, which is cool. Like it was a cool adventure to pick up. And but you get it, and a lot of things on Kickstarter, like you back it, it's cool, you read it maybe once, you put it on the shelf, and you remember it, but then you're never gonna see that person again. You're never gonna have a chance to interact with their company again, and that product may never be for sale again. But Frank walked up to me at one show, and I was working a booth, and he's like, "Hey, nice to meet you, I'm Frank." I'm like, "Oh, I have your book. This is so cool." And then he pulled out of his backpack like 20 extra copies, and he's like, "Are you interested in carrying my thing?" And I was like, "Yes." And now we're like very good friends, and we work a lot together and all that. But that was the difference between a one-off product that I like but is on my shelf amidst 100 others versus a friendship and a business partner and a person that I'm interacting with regularly and thinking about anytime somebody's like, "Do you know any adventure writers?" Frank's one of the first person that comes to my mind, and it's all because he went to that show, and not only did he come to that show, he approached and we had a conversation, and then cream of the icing on the cake, cherry on top, he had a bag full of the stuff that is hard to get elsewhere. So yeah, that just I love it.
So there's I think it was no, Malcolm Gladwell. No, not Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell's no, it's I forget the guy's name. Wrote The Tipping Point. Wrote oh, I can't even forget his name. Anyway, one of the things he talked about is important. He talked about how some businesses were changing
It
the
was
way.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Was
You're
it?
right. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, you are.
Okay, who's the I'm trying to think who I was thinking I was talking about.
Yeah.
So Malcolm Gladwell says that a lot of businesses have limited and changed the flow of entrances and the flow of people in and arrange their buildings so that more people are in contact with other people happenstantially.
Ooh.
And that it some believe that it's through those contacts in those random contacts that is where a lot of important business things happen. Like you see somebody like, oh yeah, hey George, I just want to talk to you about this, or hey, whatever. And I do believe that to be successful in when I say successful, I mean, you know, we'll call the degree we're at successful, but whether that's successful or not, I don't know. But you have to be meeting people. You have to be engaging with people, and not just the same people all the time, but new people. And I think that the conventions is definitely one way of doing that. And if you're just a person just trying to crank things out, it doesn't always work out. But then uh, to be meeting new people, just putting out resumes, but actually physically, shaking hands with people, giving people product. But I think the other thing is there's also people known as connectors, and they are people that are able to bridge gaps. And I think Zach is definitely a connector. So my point is, you can happenstantially. I mean, we kind of happenstantially came together because I started working with needing somebody to do work for the Kickstarters, but because of that, then all of a sudden there's other connections through you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so
Well,
I
it's
guess my
also,
point. Oh, go ahead.
no. Go, yeah. Do your point. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm just saying is it's very important. I think if you're wanting to both publish, but more important, if you're a freelancer, is to be making yourself not just available, but actually pursuing interactions with people, and conventions are a great place to do that.
But I took this class. I'm sorry, Zach, you had something you
No.
wanted
No.
to say,
No.
and I
No.
was just
No. You're good.
so I took this class back in the college days, and it was talking about how the entire class centered around the idea that businesses do not use communication as much as businesses are communication, right? They are just a structure of interconnected communication networks, all working towards one goal. And we talked a lot about the hierarchy of the types of communication that are used in business settings, such as, emails or instant messages, phones, or in person, and how emails are like the very bottom of the list. Like nothing gets done through emails because not only is it impersonal, but you have this wall of text that someone has to go through and read. Then they have to formulate, type out a response. Then they spend a lot of time trying to figure out, does this sound right? Does this look right? Then they send it. You got to wait for them to get it, and it just doesn't work. And this is sort of what I feel like avoiding conventions, avoiding meeting people is. It's that you're trying to be a part of this business, but through email alone. Whereas you meet people in person, you're able to get the thing out that you want to say. In the time that I can put my foot in my mouth pretty quickly, but I could also see the look on Zach's face when I do, then I know immediately to clarify it, and then he can ask me any questions. And in the amount of time that it takes us to have that kind of a quick back and forth in person is still less than the time it would have taken for someone to read the email that is the initial thing, right? So
Yeah.
so much more can get done, and businesses are communication. I believe, I firmly believe this. And so if you aren't putting yourself in a position to be communicated with efficiently, like in person at conventions, seeking people out, then it's basically like you're trying to hide from the business itself. I don't know if that.
Yeah, and I would even like I fully agree, and I think that then the other thing that you can do as part of that is with an email or even with an instant message, as soon as I read a Facebook message, as soon as I read a Discord message, as soon as I do an email and I respond or just read it and don't feel like I need to respond, like you are nowhere in my periphery or in my field of vision even at that point, right? Like
Yeah.
I have no reinforcement of you as your existence.
Yep.
But it's funny as like I should have an example of this, and I do exact right here. I have like six examples of this, but like, you know, my friend Andy wrote a tiny little like trifold adventure and gave it to me at GameholeCon, and he printed like 100 of these and gave them to his buds and people that he talked to, right? And what's crazy is like I love Andy. He's one of my favorite people. But because he gave me this and I'm like, this is cool, and I have it right here on my desk, I think about Andy every day.
Yep.
And that is going to result for somebody. Maybe it's me, maybe it's somebody else, but it's going to result in Andy getting contacted by somebody at some point. It's like, I need a writer for this. Oh, Andy, I'm thinking about him right here. So that's something that you could do through conventions that you can't, that connection point, that communication point, that there's an extension to that communication that you can do, especially if this isn't a business card and it's something that I actually put value to.
Right, something
But
that you can use. There's also this old psychology study that I always found super interesting. The long and short of the study was they took a person and then they basically said like one of these two people are going to like you are in charge of who lives and who dies, right? And one of the people that they show is a person that they hate, they despise. The other is a person they don't know, and almost always the test subject opted to save the person they didn't like, right? Because even if they don't like him, right, they're still a part of their world now. There are connections, and so like the brain can't shake the thought of the person you have met and interacted with, even if it's negative. So it's like, hey, even if you go and put your foot in your mouth, like some people do, it's still creating connections, creating a touchstone point to where I'm on Zach's mind all the time now because this guy's seeing me every week.
that's why you send me a text every 20 minutes. Or I
That's
like clockwork is, it's annoying, but I'm at
that's
least
also
thinking about you. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
also why anytime I know that we're going to skip a session, and then I won't see you for 2 weeks, I add another tattoo on your arm when you aren't paying
Oh,
attention.
yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why you
exactly.
have
I wondered.
16 faces of me on your
Yeah,
arm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff, I thought I'm going to change our topic completely, but I thought this might be a good opportunity. And hey, if you're still listening, people, we're going to talk about OSE again. Um, we talked about Blood Sands and the whole thing about that, but I don't know that. I think it's been a while since you've talked about Gary's appendix. Uh, and I know you
Oh,
got some stuff worked on that you're working on in like building up to there, but I think that I'm gonna point the spotlight on Jeff for a minute. Like
Please do. Let's talk
I
about
think,
Jeff.
yeah, I think that Gary's appendix is such a really like it's exactly the type of zine that I want to buy the most in the sense that I can buy a lot of adventures, and I do buy a lot of adventures. I can buy a lot of setting books or player's guides or whatever, and I buy a lot of those. But if Zach is buying something for Zach, it's going to be a book of articles, a book of ideas, a book of whatever. And I think like Levi Combs makes his own version of a book of ideas, often. But
Yes.
you have, I think, one of my favorite approaches to it because we get a bit of Jeff, but we also get a bit of Will or Graham or whoever, right? Like we get all these other voices in there, all ending it. I don't know that I've ever heard you say, what was the beginning of this kernel of the idea? Why did you start Gary's Appendix? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. This is going to sound kind of crazy. So originally, I was wanting to hire an academic, and I actually thought I had one on board where I wanted to do a zines or small books based on very specific cultural locations and have details of those locations in a way that would be usable at the table. So if you want to do, say, Pompeii, you could go through and like, it not only just like what is a day-to-day life like, but everything that would be information would be items that would be usable at the table. And for some cultures, like what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to be a good citizen? Or what is the things that people aspire? What does religion look like on a day-to-day basis? What does piety look like? If you're talking about Japan, it's going to be different than China. It's going to be different than Korea. It's going to be different, different time periods. And so I tried that. And the guy flaked on me. Um, oh yeah, it's okay. It worked out. So in my mind, I wanted to do art. I thought, well, I'd like to do articles. And so that came about. And I think I was also wanting to do a bestiary. So I think I was going to just do a bestiary, but then I thought I'm going to add this to this as well and do them combined. And so it was like probably 4 months before I actually came to publication. I've tried doing collaborations before and they usually fail. Well, I haven't done that many times, but they've fallen apart. But for whatever reason, this one worked, and I wrote some bestiary entries and got people to write articles, and it worked out okay.
I remember on Gary's Appendix 1, you had a vision of the articles being inspired, and you still maintain that like piece of premise on the Kickstarter page, but you have that idea of articles inspired by Gary Gygax's original Dungeon Master's Guide for AD&D, and like the encouragement, at least initially, was, "Hey, article writer, go to that book and find things that." As you read, you are inspired by, or that you have questions about, or you have, whatever. Just that gets your
Right.
brain pumping. And
Real,
then, go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick, I only just now realized that Gary's appendix is about Gary Gygax and not Gary Sinise. I just uh mind
And
blown.
also
Continue,
not
please.
an actual appendix, but a book appendix. Yeah, right.
I thought that we have been talking about Gary Sinise's appendix and that we are going to soon see Gary's lungs,
Yeah,
Gary's short-term gout.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got a
Nope.
story about that later I may share. So,
Yeah. But that was the original premise, was, or the initial prompt was, go there and do that. Now, I think that you have made the choice over the last several issues to not detach fully from that, but remove that as a prerequisite prompt. But was there something that kind of got that working in the back of your mind
well,
initially?
I think the idea is usable art. I'm not sure exactly how, but I would say that it's, and I don't think I've communicated probably exactly my thoughts, but so Gary Gygax, my understanding is correct, wanted to basically shortchange his old business partner out of royalties, so came up with a new version of Dungeons and Dragons. And so he created the Dungeon Master's Guide, and he had certain things that he put into it. but he realized he needed more room or he needed more articles. So he told everybody, hey, write stuff. And people just wrote stuff and he jammed that stuff into the book, even though there is nothing there's no design towards compatibility. There's nothing in this that is, if you look through it, it is just a hodgepodge of things. And some like, like gemstones. It goes into long details about gemstones. You want to look in the early part about diseases, your chances of getting a disease in a swamp versus in the mountains, and what kind of diseases could you get, what kind of chances of getting parasites. I mean, but you can honestly just sit down and flip through that and start reading and think, this is fascinating. It's like,
And nonsense at the same
Yeah.
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't, individually, it works. Collectively, it should be a failure, but it's not. And I think
Yes.
the reason is it was the Wikipedia before there was a Wikipedia for nerds because I mean it's got it all and I think the idea in my mind is it's even going back to the bestiary. Like the bestiary, I don't need another variation of goblins. I don't need another version of an orc. I don't need I mean, we so many people do that, but like let's look at the bestiary. Let's look at the maybe the original inception of the creature or ways that narratively this could be more interesting. And the same thing with the articles. It's like not everything has to be like, oh, firearm rules, or and there's nothing wrong with firearm rules, or adding laser guns. There's nothing wrong with that, but like just different articles because I think those odd things like the DMG, 15-year-old Jeff flipping through the DMG, getting all sorts of crazy inspiration, um, just through that.
there's there's definitely also a key to like obviously old school essentials and the OSR in general is built upon the foundation of BX or ADD whatever like something in that category, right? And that I do think that like sometimes when you iterate on an iteration, it's further away from the core.
Yes.
So if you said, and certainly some of my articles and some of other people's articles have referenced old school essentials in the piece, but by saying, hey, let's like circumnavigate at least to some extent around the iteration, and let's go back to the core framework of the thing that we're all kind of rallying behind allows Gary's appendix to be, yes, an OSE thing and very much an OSE thing, but the sensibilities and the ideas are not so laser focused on, what's on the page of Old School Essentials and what Old School Essentials is kind of, the framework that it's the scaffolding that it's built up around itself. And it's at least encompassing this whole other area of ideas and concepts.
Yeah, and the idea was that the mechanics that, I mean, the mechanics that there are in sometimes in some articles are really very loose mechanics. I think probably the most detailed mechanics was more in this last issue, and that had to deal with the dice drop mechanics and things like that. That is probably as far as adding mechanic. That's I don't say even adding. That's probably the most complex. Most stuff is just most complexity is just some rolling on some tables. But I think the idea really is not the idea is really that it should be usable for really any system because there's nothing I would say for any article there's nothing about it that makes it uniquely OSC, but OSC is definitely a good flag to plant this too,
Yeah, yeah.
or plant this flag too. I don't know. Maybe that's the flag we're planting on the book. I'm not sure the metaphor.
It's a good wagon to hitch our
I
Horse
hitch
too.
our
I
yeah,
believe
yeah.
it's two flags with one stone.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, I just like to me it's like great because you could feel all of what we just talked about when I read somebody else's articles or whatever. It's just like I get the vibes of this is somebody who was not given all the creative freedom to say go and write whatever you want, but was given the ability to write something that they actually find fascinating. And so I really it was crazy to be you brought up that last issue, but it's crazy to be that both Graham and I created die it was like mind creation tables or whatever. Like it was almost a one-to-one for the type of thing we were doing in our articles, but they were then you read it and you're like two very different approaches to the same vein of a concept.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that, and people do ask before they submit, and I say, yeah, I'll take this or I'll take that. But it wasn't until I started putting it together that I realized I had some two very mechanically heavy
Yeah.
articles.
When you reach out to me and you're like, "Hey, I need a drawing, a schematic to go with what you're communicating," I know that I have maybe stepped across the boundary into new territory. Like, hey, I can't visualize what you're talking about, so please provide, uh, a visual help, a visual guide. Like, but that was, I mean, that's fun. Every once in a while, I guess that's okay. But
Well, and what's hard is, I mean, I have an idea for a thing. I generally try to keep things simplistic, and these got not really super detailed, but there's a lot going on with both of these, and I was hesitant, but then I end up having a person write and comment that this was their favorite issue, and especially like I already told you they um, mentioned that the mine one was their favorite article out of all of the one of articles that they've read. And so I realized that, I'm not going to, so the next issue is going to be nothing but drop tables for mines,
yes, and
variations.
thank you, Mom, for writing into Jeff. I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah,
It's
that
it's
worked out. Yeah.
So
it's
I think
it
the idea is that just because one person says it doesn't mean that that's what everybody wants. But I think it goes to show that they probably it's worth exploring, adding at least having some more complex things in each, maybe not each issue,
Well,
but
and there's definitely though like one thing that I notice a lot, and I don't know, I'm ending up I'm gonna end this show and I'm gonna walk away and I'm gonna say I'm so glad that we talked about Gary's appendix as much as and I do adore Bloodstained and I think we gave it like an hour, so I feel good about talking about this now. But like I think that Gary's appendix is special and you should buy it when you buy Bloodstained. But what I like is that some people's like my approach is always I look at the DMG and then when I go to write, I'm also like I have the advanced OSE advanced books out in front of me and I'm like referencing pages and trying to be like, hey, I want to make sure that when you're using this book, yeah, that it's not like hardcore linked, but if there is a linkage, I want to make sure that I include a reference, right? If there's a
right.
possibility. And I like that because that's how my brain works. But I actually really enjoy that. Then I pick up like Troy's article recently that has nothing to do with old school essentials really, but
Right.
is super fun. And I think that finding that a book that doesn't just hire people that are technical and like trying to cite everything with sources and build it, find an excuse to put mechanics into it. But then also people who are like, here's just vibes or just flavor or just crazy ideas or here's like Troy's was the one about different actual world gases, right, that could flood
Yes.
mine. Like, what a cool article that has I don't remember, but it certainly didn't reference very many mechanics, but so many ideas popped out of that for me, and it's definitely an article to be inspired by. So
I think what I like about Gary's appendix, well, not only was it a chance for me to write, and that's always great, but what I like about it is like I play 5e, like D&D 5e typically. That's what my game table is kind of centered around right now. And but if you look at the game I am running, and like stripped away the character sheets in front of people, you may not be able to recognize what I'm doing because it's, I'm never just running this game. I'm running this game with a piece of this here and a piece of this over here and a piece of this over here. And what you have with that mine thing in Gary's appendix with that, the dice drop map and such is you're saying, hey, much like we all play these games, but our own like hybrid of every experience we've had with gaming in here, this book just gives you like, hey, here's like 15 more experiences with other games right here at your fingertips. Go. And I think it's also for the ADD brain that I have. To go from an article about real world gases to dice drop maps to fungus people to, I mean, this is just fun. It's great.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, like I love bouncing like that from thought to thought because that's how my brain typically goes from thought to thought. So,
Yeah, and it's been, and I've been very fortunate. I've had to kind of increase the stable because as some people are able to write and later they're not, and some people have things going on. But I think definitely the strength of it has been the variety of people that have come to share their own perspectives, and it's it's really neat. Really, the success really is just in the variety of people that have written, and I'm pretty fortunate to have people writing for me. So that's definitely huge, and it seems to be fairly consistent as far as people are still buying it. So at
Well,
least,
and here's where I'll do the plug for you. And all of the zines are available right now for issues 1 through 8, I'm going to say this all right. But then the Omnibus is the next project on the horizon, which compiles the first how many, like 5 or 6 issues, you're
yeah,
thinking?
it'll be 6 issues, and now I was going to compile it, but I'm it's all going to be in color. I'm adding all. There's going to be color art to it. It's going to be in a hardback form.
And that means that I think the plan that you told me was you're retiring all of the single print runs of all these things potentially, which means that now you got a collector's item.
Yes.
And this is where we say that, like, yes, you might hear the idea of anonymous to be, oh, I'm sad that I bought the first 5 issues in zines because I really now want the hardcover.
I
Well,
I
you know
don't know. I think what we have
that
before us, Zach, is a grand experiment.
well, the white box is the most valuable thing that you could own on your shelf right now, even though it's the worst looking thing that Gary ever produced. So, in the same vein, you should definitely buy up all of the first through 6 editions
Yeah, because you
of
just never know. Well,
Never Know, and
well, plus I don't know if you guys have collector brain like I do, Zach. I know you have collector brain because
I
I'm
have
looking
collect.
at the background. Yeah, yeah. I don't know that I've ever in my life said, "Oh, they've reprinted it in another format." I'm disappointed. I'm like, no, no, no. Now I can own it in two ways.
Yes, 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 exactly right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you showed me the 2 versions of a book that you just got,
Yeah.
so that's yes.
well, and that's just it. This is what's strange is, there's a point where, it's like, something is like 8 issues in. You're like, it just seems like a big buy-in, but strangely enough, the last Kickstarter was very strange. We had a lot of people buying in at purchasing all of them at the $100 tier, but we also had less people buying the single issue compared to the PDF, which was unusual.
Yeah, yeah. You never know. I think that's the tides of or the winds of culture and society and where we're what everybody's feeling at the time and the time of the year that it is and all of those things. But yeah, and I mean the reality is that we've done a ton of surveys over the last several projects, and consistently the answer is, Jeff, if you could make a hardcover, we would love that. So this is kind of saying, all right, well, let's do it then and see if that holds true. So,
Yes, yes. And so that will be, if all goes well, that should be coming up in March.
yeah, like basically tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Actually, this episode is releasing in April, so sorry we hyped it up, guys. It's
that's
already over.
that's the crazy thing, and I'll have to yeah, but like that's the crazy thing about just your projects is that when somebody else in another stream or another publisher says, "Oh, our next project is X and it's coming up," you're like, "Oh, 4 months from now."
Yeah.
6 months from now, we'll be able to look at the thing that you are talking about today. And it's like, nope, Jeff means 2 weeks from now, you'll be able to follow the page, and 4 weeks from now, you'll be clicking the buy button on the omnibus, and that's a scary, scary
Yeah.
thought, month to month to month.
Well,
So
the layout's all done, and the it's I gave it to a person to do some editing because I had to. Sometimes my desire to kill widows, I end up mucking things up. So
In a book will. It would kill widows in a
I
book.
don't
In
understand the
text. Yeah.
context of
Yeah,
that. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what?
Yeah.
What? Like you just
So if I tell you, Will, you will never be able to unsee this when you look at books. But if you have like a single word in at the bottom of a paragraph, that's a widow, and that's a
oh,
no-no.
okay, yeah.
Yes, yes, and Jeff murders all of them. In fact, we got a call lined up later this week where we're just going to go through a document and kill
So
widows for.
what's hard is this is what's hard is if you're doing a zine and you're doing two columns here, it's narrower. And then if you do an indent due to like a bullet, it's even narrower. And when you're dealing with mechanics, sometimes I think there's some that's gonna have to live with. It's just that's those are gonna be, hard to address. But generally you do not want to leave widows just hanging out there.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
I have that I have heard people mention this before. I just never realized that that was the term for it. I just figured you were going out murdering
yeah. I knew.
women
I
who's
could see it in
lost
your
their
eyes. You're
husbands.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why does he? Why does he hate? Yeah,
Yeah,
When I
why do
was a
you
photographer, I shot my wife and framed my kids. So,
yeah.
yes, yes.
so
And with
anyhow,
that, yes.
but so we're once the editing's done, I'm ready to get proof copies ordered. So it's pretty much a done deal. So
That's
I
exciting.
I think we're reaching the end of the time space continuum. Uh, Will, would you want to give a little shout to the videos and the channel that you frequently post to?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel, like my thing, like my YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Um,
whatever you want to plug.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's actually I don't know when this is going to be coming out, but tomorrow a new series I'm releasing a new series on my YouTube channel called This Effin Monster, which will be a series where I take the 2014 Dungeon Master, or I'm sorry, 2014 Monster Manual for D&D 5e, and then I compare it to the 2024 5e. I'm going to go monster by monster. Basically, I've committed myself to 300 videos in the next year or so. We'll see how long I stick to that. But tomorrow the first episode releases, so really hoping that people take a look at it. I'm right now on a big kick to try to get to 5,000 subscribers.
Whoa.
Yeah. I've been hovering at 1,400 around there for months now, and so, but I also haven't been putting out much content. So I'm starting a new series, going to see if we can hit that 5K at some point, and yeah, see if I can dust off the old camera and start using it again. So yeah, so that's out there. This F and GM on YouTube. You can find me out there, and Twitter
Zach,
and Blue Sky.
well, I'll put stuff in the show notes.
Oh,
Zach, do you have anything you want to promote?
Yeah, you can join me in heckling Will on his new series, and you just post in the comments. And especially if he stops the series, you can join me in posting across every platform, asking him why he stopped the series, and does he get to commit to actually doing something with his life again? Like that's the sort of thing that I'm excited about. No,
I,
I would say, hey, if you want to check me out, I'm the marketing and production director for Limithron. We do Pyreborg. So we've got a lot of projects upcoming there. I've got my own projects on that side coming out. I did Dark Visions, which is a Shadow Dark supplement with Jeff. It just wrapped up on Kickstarter and it's going to be releasing here shortly. And I mean, there's a lot of irons in the fire. You can follow me on Facebook or you can go to zacgoins.com and see what I've got going on.
you have an actual website?
I do have an actual website. Yeah.
Oh, is there a place I can comment anywhere?
No,
You know, like
absolutely not. Because I'm a smart person and I don't open myself up to nonsense like
Yeah,
some people.
in general, on the internet, if you've got a website, allowing comments is a bad thing.
Yeah, or just in life, allowing comments
Yeah,
is a bad
exactly.
thing. So,
I just need you to see the things I write about you, and you don't go on to Twitter, so you don't get to see all the
thank God. Yeah, yeah,
things I say about you, the pictures I post of you, the drawings I've made of you.
yeah, yeah. Thank God. Yeah. Oh, hey, thanks for having us on, Jeff. This has been
Yeah,
great.
thank
Sure.
you, Jeff.
Until next time.
Yeah.